Ashley, I'm going to ask you to share your screen, and then we're going to talk through these. In the Research Coordination Network proposal, you need to identify research challenges that can be overcome by bringing people together that have not been brought together in the past. So supporting new collaborations, increasing a network. How are you going to solve some of your research challenges by getting more diverse in your collaborations? So when we developed this, we've been talking for a long time. We've used the Audible Universe information and done some lit review work. And what we came up with was starting with like an overarching concept. And I'll let you take it from there, Ashley.
Yeah. So like Kate said, should I swap to my audio since?
Yeah, go ahead and swap to your audio.
Awesome. So yeah, like Kate said, we have an.
Just one sec. Try that.
Okay. That's you. Turn off yours.
Talk. No. Oh, your mic.
Turn off yours.
Okay, yeah, so we were going back to the initial configuration. It wouldn't be an SWC if we didn't have at least one technical difficulty. Or if we didn't cause a feedback loop at least once. Anyhow, with that, like Kate let in, we are having kind of an overarching motivation. The point of this is that for an RCN proposal, you need to show intellectual merit as well as broader impact. The research challenges are mostly focusing on the intellectual merit, but within that,
no, just slow down. Talk loud, but slow down.
Okay. So yeah, within that, you need to have a sense of why do we care? What is the use of this like technology intellectually? Well, we have many obvious ones to us, being people that care about sonification, care about accessibility, and care about the cool new ways we can look at data. We have to explain that. So in order to set up a problem, we're looking at kind of the move to big data and the move to data sets that are hard to look at. And that traditional methods can't really observe fully. So our overarching motivation, the current wording, the way I'll be framing this is that the size and complexity of modern data sets requires new methods of data analysis and display. That leads into a very commonly identified challenge that is still a bit too high level for our research challenges, which is a lack of standardization across sonification and as a across empirical sonifications, like within, applying it to domains. In order to get such a standardization, we need to actually have a few pieces in play. The first one is there is a heavy compartmentalization of research development and dissemination efforts that we believe we have identified that hinders sonification innovation in the sense that we have a few communities such as the international community on auditory displays that are very insular. We have projects that are in, within ICAP, the international community on auditory display. A lot of their papers are only shared within members, and most people don't really realize they exist, even if they're interested in this field, which can cause issues. We also have the sense in which many projects get developed, but we don't necessarily get a good dissemination of what was the development process like, what was the motivation for design choices, who was involved in this. The papers documenting that don't really exist. And that leads to compartmentalization where that research knowledge and the understanding of what is going on is kept within the research team, which means that we have multiple groups doing very similar things. In order to kind of bridge this, we also care very much so about the potential for BVI researchers, because this is both a moral care in the sense of you shouldn't be doing something that is an accessibility focused goal without including, the groups that are benefiting from this in that development. And also since we need this as a research challenge, there is potential for BVI researchers who are using these tools, have interacted with similar tools, and are just very immersed in kind of a sound-based ecosystem to provide really, really good insight during the development process. So currently there isn't necessarily great collaboration with BVI researchers. I'm pulling heavily from looking at things like the actual literature that exists. So within ICAD, for instance, doesn't seem to show much collaboration there. And that is a pretty big hole that needs fixed, especially if you want to have standardization ever occur. You want firm foundations that are both morally just and the best they can be. Our third research challenge is inadequate collaboration between different research fields, which stifles the creation of scientifically useful sonification tools. That's a lot of words, but in short, as everyone here is probably aware, sonification takes a lot of different skill sets. You need to have some sense of how people hear, you need to have some sense of how sound works, you probably need some sense of like how to make a computer make sounds. If you want to apply it to a domain, you need some sense of what is the data set like? How is this domain structured? What do I even want from it? It takes a lot of different skill sets from a lot of different fields. And as of present, there doesn't appear to be sufficient collaboration between those fields. This ties in a bit to the compartmentalization, but we view it as compartmentalization from Research Challenge 1, but it's reviewing it as separate for now. So with those in mind, and I should note, this presentation is available in the agenda. It is linked from there if you want to review these and have them on hand. I do see that a few people are on it as of now and looking at it. We would like to open this to discussion. Do you think that we are hitting on something accurate with these? Do you think we're missing the challenges that are present? Is there any way that I can clarify? I know I'm not necessarily the clearest explainer at times.
So yeah, some of the things that we were, some examples are, we are very familiar with the work of Wanda Diaz-Merced, which was a number of years ago, and she specifically developed a tool to assist with her own research, went through an evaluation process, and some of those lessons learned were adopted by other projects, but the dissemination of that and the continuation that then lies to the researcher who had the disability that did it for a specific reason. And so that's part of what has informed, I think that's Research Challenge 2. And even though we have standardization, some protocols, ICAD has this well developed. It's not informing new projects to the degree that it could. And we don't see a lot of evidence when we do the lit review that that's happening. So that's why it's listed as a research challenge. And so ultimately, the thing that we've all been talking about for a year and a half is the need for some level of standardization or guidance in terms of evaluation or the development of these tools. Really, our thesis here is that our logic model on this is that can't happen until people start publishing their results. And so the coordination network really needs to support these projects to get to the point where they're publishing their results someplace, and that all of those results are getting consolidated through the network and where people can have a one-stop shopping reference for their area of need. And so that's the overarching direction that we're going here. So with that, I will be quiet and listen for comments. Amy, go ahead.
Yeah, clarification question, really, when you're talking about BVI researchers, you are specifically meaning BVI people who are blind or visually impaired who are doing research on sonification.
Or any, actually that would be domain and sonification. So anybody who's doing, I think we are actually implying that it is also researchers in different domains who have visual impairments engaged with the field. Or
so that would be Wanda's situation. I think
Wanda,
and others.
Yourself, and others.
Me, right. Okay, right, okay. Because there's another person, Daniel Hodges, who University College London, who is a blind researcher in this space. Mm-hmm. So that's a little bit different flavor. So I was trying to suss that out a little bit.
Yeah,
and maybe you want both. you know.
Yeah, actually, we want both people, anybody who's working in the field, whether they're a domain specific area or there are audiologists that are working in the neuroscience and aspect of this. But getting people who have sufficient scientific background to contribute to the development of the tools in order to keep this everything that's developed accessible and takes advantage of lived experience of people who,
Right.
all that.
Another one, Bruce can concur or not, would be Brandon Biggs is another one, for example, who's himself visually impaired, but doing research in this space. So.
Good. So
Yeah.
we've been developing those lists through the World Chat for a while, but please enter those names either on the agenda and the notes area of the agenda, or just throw them in the
I'll
chat
put it
box.
in the chat.
That would be helpful. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. That's it for me for now.
Thank you. Thank you, Fia.
Yeah, the same challenge that you addressed just now. I was wondering, why do they have to just be researchers in the field? We're talking about the importance of the multidisciplinary collaboration for it to be successful. So blind musicians, blind engineers, blind developers, blind educators. Yeah.
Yeah. So Ashley's indicating that we'll need to make that more clear, that we are indicating anyone who's relevant to the project is considered in the field of, so maybe professionals might be, we'll have to look at the wording on that to make sure that that's clear.
Yeah, maybe professionals. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think this is a very good point, because we definitely want to be clear that this is a big vote, because you need a big vote to do this. And we don't want to accidentally scope ourselves in too tightly when doing that.
So good. And what you're bringing up, these sorts of things are things that other people also bring up in terms of reviewers, et cetera. So, okay, Fia, did you have anything else before I go on?
No, thanks.
Okay, thanks. Sarah, you're up next.
I think one of the things that comes to mind, for me at least, with regards to this project, is that it is to some extent a feedback loop. So the fact that it might be difficult as of right now to get BVI people involved might be because the tools to get them involved in these fields are still in development. So in order to get people, to get researchers and engineers, all these blind and visually impaired people we want involved, there might be some forward investment in terms of resources and time that needs to be made, because the more that these sonification tools and other accessibility tools are available, the more people we'll have in these fields that then we can get involved.
Yeah, and I agree, Sarah, that's a very good point. And that's actually something covered in our broader impacts that we're not really talking about today, because that one is actually, compared to the research challenges, is way easier to write than this, because we've been living it here. All of us have been living that piece. So I appreciate you bringing that up. And if there's, to the extent that we can incorporate that voice into the research challenge, we really have to keep that in the forefront as well. But that will show up very strongly in the broader impact section. So the grant is primarily evaluated on its ability to communicate the research challenges. And but we do have a section regarding how this will impact workforce, education, et cetera. So all of the things that we're doing, the Learn group is doing, all of those pieces can come into play in the broader impact section. Other comments? This is really great help. Thank you.
Hi, Kate. Could I say a few words? Gary here.
Yes, please, Gary, go ahead.
I think we've been talking around what is an identified issue that's sometimes overlooked, and I think Fia's question raised it, and Ashley's mention of the ICAD group was also topical. I spent some time in recent weeks looking through the ICAD archives and some of the papers there, and there's some really great stuff. There's some good background stuff, and there's some very thought-provoking material. One in particular I came across was, I think it was around about 2019. It's not so long ago. A quite critical article that was written by a participant in the field, but it identified what I think is something that we need to address in this endeavour as well, and that is that the ultimate goal of the individual projects, there's almost a bifurcation in terms of their goals that inevitably impacts the implementation and the strategies and the actual techniques, and that is that a sonification project that is targeted specifically at research enablement or research enabling, such as the projects that we've been working on, Vox Magellan and Starsound, that were sort of initiated in response to my situation. Research targeted sonification has quite a different set of benchmarks for performance compared to sonification that's more directed at outreach. And education falls a little bit in between, but there is a gap there that needs to be acknowledged, and perhaps the specific applications involved and the needs thereof needs to be properly identified, because to lump everything in together as a sonification project ignores what are very different requirements. And while an outreach/education project can be, incredibly awe-inspiring and draw people in and meet the goals of those particular important endeavours, a research application is quite different in terms of what it needs in terms of quantification, access to data, proper interpretation of a data space, for example, so that I guess I'm just bringing to light what is an already recognised issue, but one that hasn't been mentioned yet in this context, and that is that the research versus outreach education dichotomy almost will be a question that's raised in terms of the development of tools and the benchmarks that they set for themselves.
Ashley, want to comment on that?
Yeah, I actually very much so agree. I believe I read the same article. That might be a sonification doomed to fail.
Yeah,
is the title.
Yeah.
And I entirely agree. So on some level, that bifurcation, I think I just mispronounced that word, is acknowledged kind of like as a baked-in facet of an RCN, in the sense that these are proposals and grants and structures that are intended to build research specifically. There's also an extent to which I definitely failed to clarify when going through through the challenges that I didn't mean empirical sonifications for the most part as the intended outcome of this. I do think with regards to the nuance there as well, whenever we talk about broader impacts on and how this will play into those, the advantage is definitely we're going to see fewer advantages towards outreach, giving people the wow of science impacts, and more so to be actually being able to attend class impacts. I think it is very important to kind of acknowledge that. So I thank you very much for bringing that point up. I definitely should have been clearer on that one going through.
We actually talked about that before the meeting started, that we needed to make sure we did it. So Cheryl, did you want to add something?
I do. I don't know where I address it in the research or the broader impacts, but development of inaccessible tools and all the work, as an example, all the work Matt Rousseau had to do to remediate pixel synth for us to even be able to evaluate it for a working recording. And it ties into people, blind or low vision folks not being involved in research and development of these tools. We can't use them always.
And that is looped into, is it 3 or is it 2? I forget.
I want to say that is 2.
2.
Yeah, because Pixel Synth was done as a as a net art project by, I'm going to say, Olivia Jackman. So it actually has kind of iCAD vibes to it, where it was done partially because it could be done, as opposed to because it's a useful thing for PPI audiences. Yeah.
Okay. Yep. And I think those are important things to continue to keep in mind and figure out how to weave that into the narrative, so that it's part of the culture of what happens, and yet still satisfies the structure of the RCN. So yeah, we'll continue to struggle with that. Other people on that topic or any other new topic?
This is Bruce, if I might.
Yes, Bruce, thank you.
So the challenge of this RCN, it basically mirrors the existential challenge of ICAD, right? So trying to build a community that is sustainable, that is published, that has impact, that has tools, that has standards, that has common language and approaches and so on. It's inclusive, that the tools are accessible and serves the needs of scientists and educators and museums and all of that. So this is a fraught challenge. I'm excited to see it being addressed, and hopefully I can help be part of the momentum moving things forward. But this is something that ICAD has faced explicitly over the years, and it's pretty gnarly. It's pretty thorny for a lot of reasons, which many of you have already encountered. But I think it would probably be very helpful if we could get more of a blend. I guess the way is to get more ICAD people involved in this.
Yes.
So that there's more cross-fertilization and kind of everybody rowing in the same direction, because there's, other than me, there's no one else that's a long time ICADer here, even though we just had the ICAD community. I know many of the people on this call were in the ICAD conference this weekend, but I think that there's a real opportunity to blend or merge or cross-fertilize or something, because we've gone through this years and over many years. So I'm stoked to see renewed energy and more people. It feels like we all just need to get in the same boat.
And that is exactly what this grant is supposed to accomplish. And if you check your inbox, we're always trying. We got you eyed up to rope you into it's in Ashley's draft box.
It's in my I need to reach out to this person box.
Yeah. So when we get to the part on the agenda, that is something that we know that's actually our intention when we're writing these. That is what we're looking at. We're looking at cool stuff going on ICAD, cool projects going on Sonification World Chat, interesting, very strong Audible Universe work. We get all three of these camps together and we should be able to support each other in accomplishing all of these other goals. So thank you for bringing that up. And Fia, what you got for us?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to the previous one and from Gary as well that I always come back to the education part. I think what we found we recently have done a lot of presentations and workshops for educators of students who are blind or vision impaired here. And the main question that keeps coming up, and there were also in the workshop, there were a lot of people with lived experience who wanted to know more about sonification. What is the proof? What is the evidence? How do educators know that they should teach students sonification? We keep saying that it is relevant and that it will open up doors and you can get more access to information. But without those accessible tools, there is no road, there is no pathway yet. So we keep raising this interest. And I think we also need to make sure that the research is not just the top level research, but it should be inclusive, research that helps people to come on board of sonification and want to be involved. And if we can show that it does help, because that's the problem that we looked at with the article that came out of the Audible Universe. There is so little evidence that it actually helps, that it is good, and that it can do something that you wouldn't be able to do otherwise. Personally, I feel strongly that there is a case for people who are blind or vision impaired to be in a lot of aspects better at interpreting sonification. I can see that it can be something that students can excel in, but they need training, they need introduction to it. And why would they be introduced if the teachers don't believe that it is relevant? They can't see where it is going, and they can't see evidence. They ask me for evidence, then because they're busy, they have a lot of things to teach. So you need to create this space that people want to feel is important enough to spend time on and effort on to introduce their students to. Otherwise, it's never. I keep saying that we need to go back to the bottom as well to keep building up. Otherwise, you do something at the top, but there's no new people coming on and become those researchers that have the lived experience and have all the capacities they need to contribute to our project. So we need to help.
Yeah, I agree with that. And that also mirrors something that I've heard Scott say at a number of different SWCs and at the splinter session that we held at the AAS meeting, which we're trying to tap as well for this RCN, is that that the goal of having data represented in journals and in the public in ways that have been shown to communicate that data are really important, and making that, the more that happens, the easier the case is to make to dedicating teacher time to that. And then we need the tools to teach how to interpret sonification. So yes, we agree. And Scott, did you have anything to add to that points, is particularly from the splinter group or anything that we might be missing or need to be considering at this point?
No, I've been largely quiet, partly because my dog's barking and partly because everyone's making good points. And I really liked the three that were presented. And I think 3 is strategically a good number. It's not too big or too many points to try to have in the proposal. Yeah, I don't, this is not really a research challenge. It might go under broader impacts, but just incorporating the fact that to be a successful researcher with sonification, the day-to-day of a researcher needs to be captured, right? So how do presentations happen with sonified data? How do journals happen with sonified output? That's an important part of enabling research through sonification, is for professionals to be able to use these tools in the common day-to-day tasks of being a researcher. And I also do echo Fia's point, the best plotting software in the world doesn't matter if no one ever learned how to read an X and Y plot. So we could make the best standards in the world, but if students are not learning this in high school and college, it's going to be for nobody at the end of the day.
Correct. Good. All right. I'm really appreciating where this conversation has taken us today. It's super helpful. We'll be parsing over all of this in the next week or so. And then after the 4th of July week holidays here in the US, we will circle back again. If there are any other comments, I do want to get to the question of, given this conversation and our research questions, we need 8 to 10 people who represent all of the needed fields in as strong a way as possible, and the target communities that we want to work with, whether that is that Jessica has talked to me about the importance of sonification to the neurodiversity community. So who do we want to make sure is part of that? And do we have recommendations? Do we have people here who would, I've had some people in mind, and I was going to start the list, but actually I decided I erased that and started over. I want to hear from this group about people that can be on the steering committee. That doesn't mean that that's the only people who will be involved with the RCN. It does mean that those will be the people that start this 5-year project, at least that their names are in front of the NSF, and they say, yes, these people can help direct this. And then then the steering committee, I'd like to get those people together and talk about what the actual structure of the RCN is. We have a number of different options for the structure of this and how to accomplish it. But I do need to start with settling on a steering committee. So with that, I open we've had some names thrown out here. I'd like you to repeat those names, and if you think that they should be part of the steering committee, or if you'd like to be part of the steering committee, start talking, folks. We're all ears.
Kate, when is this proposal due?
It is it's a rolling deadline.
Do you have a target?
Our target would have been the end of the summer. I'm thinking I would ideally, the 1st of October would be when I'd like to see this out the door. Depending on when my right hand gets back from maternity leave, it has a lot to do with when we can get this done.
And is there a top finance, ask in terms of the grant amount?
Yeah, the $500,000 over 5 years, so it's not very big.
500 over 5 years. And which directorate is this in?
At
NSF?
You know what? I actually have not reached out to a program officer yet on that, and I am embarrassed to say
No
I'm
problem.
behind on
No,
this.
that's okay.
That is a problem. I should have done that sometime. Scott.
Yeah, just trying to get the boundary conditions.
Yeah, thank you.
Mhm.
Scott, go ahead.
So in terms of names, this is a wild idea, but I think it might be important. I think we should try and get somebody in nature or science on board at the publishing level, because it's not astronomy specific. I do think that journals have a big role to play in at least one, if not all of the RCNs you mentioned, plus the broader impacts on the day-to-day problem. And we just recently got Nature Astronomy, at least, to agree to do a bunch of sonification work from Chris Harrison's paper that
Right.
Sorry, not Chris's, but Anita's.
Yeah.
He was on it too. So we might be able to work that angle, and that could be pretty attractive, I think. And again, I don't want to make this astronomy specific, obviously. We want to make it pretty broad.
Yeah.
So I'm hesitant to say, like, oh, just use my buddy at the astronomy journals, because that's not going to really function the way we want. Just a suggestion. And
No,
I could try to see, or Chris could see if we can ping somebody there.
I think that's really good.
I know a couple of people at science, but not very well.
Okay. So we've got some other ideas here. Other people, I know a lot of, I have my list of astronomy possibilities is pretty long, and people from World Chat here who have been attending for a long time and are doing other, I will be tapping you depending on what names we come up with here, but definitely we can have possibly a couple people from astronomy specific here, but that would be out of the 10, 2 astronomers would probably be as many as we could do. Okay, so so it doesn't need to be someone who's a full-time professor. It doesn't need to be we had very, very good reviews on our steering committee for the Sci-Access RCN. So we had broad representation from the different areas. Not everyone even had a PhD. They either had the lived experience or they had some credentials. They were known in the field for doing something. So it doesn't have to be PhDs. I would aim for probably 2/3 of the people to have the PhDs. I will be the PI on this, and I do not have a PhD.
Kate, would someone from the technical communications field be helpful?
Can you explain? I'm not thinking along those lines.
Someone
right
who teaches people how to communicate science data in user-friendly and understandable ways. So basically a bridge between the academic and the common layperson.
That would be good to have them involved, but I don't think that they would fit well on the steering committee. I think
Okay.
we really need people who are engaged in some way in sonification tool development or sonification research or acoustics. We need somebody from each one of those domain areas. People working on projects or people who have expertise in a particular area so that we try and I'm thinking that ICAD community, we need to get members of that group in here.
This is Bruce. I think you want to cover the entire ecosystem. So you're going to perhaps want someone certainly on the science side of things, but also on the education side, the policy side, someone from ETS, testing, government, NASA, like Robert Alexander. I mean, the whole ecosystem, right? Because you can, if there's one missing link in the chain, it all falls apart. So probably a broad sampling across the whole ecosystem.
Yeah,
and when I'm out of the car, I'll send you a bunch of names and suggestions.
Good. We really would appreciate that. Can you tell me what makes you say the policy side? Can you give me some ideas on that?
Yeah, we did a study. We built tools to help students at Schools for the Blind learn math, and did a deployment study. Everybody loved it. It was developed with and for the students and their teachers. All that great thing. There was PhD dissertations that came out of it. Proof. And then we said to the state of Georgia testing people, when the students, the blind students take their standardized tests, can they use this tool? And the policymakers said, hell no, because that will give them an advantage over the sighted students. Right? And our jaws dropped to the floor. And so we suddenly realized that no matter how good our tools were, how participatory our design process was, all of that, there's going to be some decision maker who could stand in your way, and they are a critical piece of the ecosystem.
Okay, interesting. Thank you. Yes, actually, and to remember, we can have people internationally on the steering committee. Funds for this can be used. I don't believe that we can pay people directly. There's some limitations on it, but this is one of the few NSF ones that international participation is strongly recommended. Yeah, so Olivia here at the office is bringing up that we could define the domains that we're trying to make sure are represented, and we can write those out. I think we're all fairly familiar with what what's been represented here in the world chat and through Audible Universe. So I'm be curious to see what read more about Bruce's recommendations, but my initial one is that I do want to see I want to see at least 3 people on the steering committee who have a visual impairment. I would like to see at least 2 people who represent the neurodiverse community. I would like to see astronomer, someone from biology, someone from the psychoneuroacoustical. Sorry if I'm jumbling this up. It's getting late here. Past my limit on being able to speak and think at the same time. And audiologist. I'm also curious as to the inclusion of someone from the cultural musical aspect of things. We definitely need the musical sound engineer design aspect of things. That's going to be an important one to cover. But Audible Universe really brought up the necessity of consideration of the cultural aspects of how we hear sound and what is pleasing and how sound is interpreted. Those are the ones that come to mind in my currently state. So psychoacoustics, yes, thank you very much. We can see it in writing now. Sound design, yes. So those are the areas. I will get those typed up someplace. But I'd like to, I really want you guys to be bold. And if you think you would like to be part of this, I've had a couple of people interested that I've talked over the last couple of months that I said we start with potential steering committee members, and then I want to make sure that we have everyone, all those areas represented. Gwen Sturdivant is in the area of statistics. So that's one area that I would like to include her because of her interest in sonification and her work in sonification, but also in the area of statistics. So that's another, yep, I'm seeing good information coming up here on the chat. Thank you. Via, go ahead.
I just wanted to ask whether it's only for people in the US or can there be internationals on the steering committee?
We can have international people on the steering committee, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, one more final question from me. Since I think all these tools are software based, should we have someone an expert in software design on steering committee?
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for remembering that for me.
Jonathan Lazar.
And what we did when we developed this access proposal, many people covered different bases. We just made a spreadsheet and started ticking off, and we picked the best combination and went with that. So please send us your suggestions. Send us recommendations if you want to tap them on the shoulder before, and if you want to volunteer yourself, please do. Especially people who've been a part of the World Chat or Audible Universe for a while, or ICAD, somebody, if you had experience in this area, that's going to be important. So, all right. I think we're coming up on our time. Good. Amy's got some.
Unrelated, Kate, I just had a couple questions for the group.
Yeah, go
but
ahead.
I don't want to, only when you're done completely.
No, I think this is good. Go ahead and ask your questions.
Okay. Two questions. There was, through this group, I learned that someone had proposed a session for the U.S. American Geophysical Union meeting, which is in December this year, on data sonification. The session listing is now online, and that is not among them. So I assume that session proposal didn't get accepted in the end. And if that's the case, which seems to be the case, is there another session that anyone in this group who's planning to present their research on data sonification at the American Geophysical Union meeting, which session are they gravitating towards? Okay, that's question number one. Question number two, totally different question. In our research, we need to put out a survey, an online survey that has media clips, audio clips, and to get people's reaction to them. We're looking for which survey platform is the most accessible to screen readers, especially when there's an audio clip included. We've been working hard in the last few days, working with Qualtrics, and there's been some issues that we're working around, figuring out how it can work, but open to other suggestions if people have any experience there. Thank you.
Our best experience here has been with SurveyMonkey, has been pretty good, but we have not done any video. Cheryl here is laughing, so she must have something to say.
I'm laughing because Qualtrics, I can use it from, if I can input stuff in, but I never was able to use it as a researcher on a project. I'm also laughing.
With a screen reader,
because-
do you mean? With
Yes, I have
Okay.
used it with the screen reader, but with your audio clips issue is what made me laugh. Scott and Jen may remember, they sent something out with audio clips to YouTube, and it kept telling me recommendations of things YouTube wanted me to watch that I'd watched that were like it. It tried the algorithm, and they had to do something to cancel that feature. So if you're going to use YouTube clips, be mindful of that.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, we're not planning to do that, but
Okay.
we'll note that. Thank you.
Scott,
Yeah, I
did
was
you
gonna
have?
say we did use SurveyMonkey, as Cheryl remembered, and we played our clips by uploading them to YouTube and embedding those as a video essentially in the SurveyMonkey. And as long as you remember to disable the suggested option, which is pretty easy to do when you
Which you
upload to
didn't.
YouTube. That's not hard. We just had to remember to do it. It seemed to work pretty well. Everybody seemed to think that it was fairly accessible. And I think Chris Harrison in the UK is also doing that for their survey. They're doing an astronomy sonification. So that would be my recommendation. SurveyMonkey with audio clips uploaded to YouTube.
Interesting. Great.
We've used everything there is out there, and actually Qualtrics has been the most accessible in our surveys over the years. Though we don't generally embed YouTube videos, we have embedded lots of videos and have surveyed 170,000 people at a time without any complaints.
Oh, I think I'm going to
So
send
there may
Jessica
be
over to your
certain
lab.
tips and
Bruce.
tricks and things.
Yeah, I'll send
Well,
Jessica over.
she's
Jessica
welcome
Roberts. Yeah.
anytime.
Okay. Thank you.
But sure.
Okay, it sounds like Bruce is going to send something, and that's a good reminder that anybody can communicate with anybody, at least to start with, through SWC at glasseducation.org. That's one S, Glass Education.
So nobody proposing to send in abstracts to the American Geophysical Union meeting for December on data certification? Nobody, the deadline is August 3rd, so there's still some time. So anyway, maybe if there's some chat offline about that would be interesting.
Sounds great. I
Thanks.
strongly recommend that. Okay. Well, it is the top of the hour, and I am very grateful to this group. Please send us your recommendations, and we will be in touch with you in the next couple of weeks. Don't be surprised if you get a tap on the shoulder from the RCN. All right, with that, I'm going to stop the recording, and if anybody wants to keep going for a bit, otherwise we'll be